Hey all, how's it going? So it's not a secret, and a lot of the people that really know me, it's not a secret that I have a deep-seated love for theater and Broadway and musicals. Over the last several years, I've seen quite a few shows, either here in town or in New York and Broadway, and a few other places. So the musicals that I like are really more of the newer ones, which I'd like to call more of the modern ones, compared as opposed to the more traditional ones. I think when someone says musicals or Broadway, we instantly think of the older type of shows, where you have like feathers, and some of them are actually pretty good. I could watch it, but for the most part, I really just like the newer ones, the more modern ones that had come out just recently, within the last several years. If you're not familiar, or if you haven't heard of it, so there's a thing called stage door or stage dooring. The stage door is where the cast and the crew would get into the theater, and usually it's a door off to the side of the theater. And in New York, most of the theaters are small, so the stage door isn't too far away from like the main entrance. So after the show is finished, what you do is you go out and onto the stage door, and there's a dedicated space outside of the stage door where the cast would actually come out, for a little meet and greet. You can say hi, say hello. They'll sign your playbills, which are these things right here. And normally what people would do is that they would ask the cast to sign their autographs in the front. However, I like to keep my playbills clean like this. And so what I do is I have the cast sign right next to their names, or right next to their pictures. So that way I still get their signatures, but keeping the front clean like that. So today I want to share with you some of the more recent or more modern shows that I've seen in recent years, within the last 5 to 10 years. These are shows that you probably never heard of. If you have, great. And if you're a fan like myself, chances are you've heard of these things, but if you haven't heard of these things at all, just hear me out. You'll probably, I'll share some really cool, interesting stories about them. And who knows, you might find them interesting enough that you'd actually watch them. So the first one would be a show called Dear Evan Hansen. And Dear Evan Hansen is a fairly new musical. It came out in 2017. And what really drew me to the show are the songs, the music. Now, when this show came out, I was going through a really tough time in my life, and the songs that they used or wrote for this show really resonated with me and really helped me out through that tough time in my life. So the story is about a guy named Evan Hansen, and Evan Hansen is what you call one of those socially awkward people who, just did not fit in. He gets made fun of. He doesn't have a lot of confidence in himself. And right off the bat, that's just very relatable, because a lot of us kind of feel like that, just going through life, right? It's the feeling of no one's listening to you, no one can see you, no one can hear you, but you're physically there, but no one pays attention to you. So that's Evan Hansen. There was an incident in his school that kind of put him in this weird situation where he was able to become popular in school and gain notoriety because of a lie that he had come up with. And that lie getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger until it affected so many people in his life, other families, other students, his friends, his family, his mom. And that story just really resonated with me because it was just very relatable. You know, this guy was going through something that a lot of us go through. The guys that wrote the show, the music for Dear Evan Hansen, are two guys named Justin Paul and Benj Pasek. And you might know them because of a movie called The Greatest Showman. And they actually wrote the songs as well. Next one is called Choir Boy. Choir Boy, this was at a really small, intimate theater when I saw it in New York. And if I remember it right, or if I saw it, if I'm correct, the theater itself was really small and it had really great acoustics that I think they weren't using mics at all. So this wasn't necessarily a musical, it was more of a play. However, in between scenes, the cast would break out into a song, and it's all done a cappella. The acoustics in that room, it was very small and intimate, just really amplified the voices, and you hear all the melodies, all the different voices, all the harmonies. It was beautiful. It talks about the struggles of men growing up gay. So it's more like a coming of age story as you're trying to figure yourself out, all the struggles that come with it. There's always that fear and stigma that's attached to it. You're afraid to be your authentic self because society dictates you to be one thing. Now that I think about it, it really is a struggle that, in general, a lot of gay men and women go through in life. Beautiful, beautiful show. Next one is, I'm gonna slip this in here. It's called In the Heights. And I had talked about this before. I did a reaction video to the movie version that's coming out in June or in May. And I got to see this in New York with the original cast, with the exception of one. Her name is Karen Olivo. And at the time that I saw it, she actually left the show to go star in a different show called West Side Story. And this was at the Richard Rodgers Theater in New York. And Richard Rodgers Theater is actually where Hamilton is playing on Broadway right now, or before the pandemic, before the Broadway shutdown. It's another show created by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who created this show. I have said this time and again, my personal opinion is that In the Heights is a far superior show to Hamilton in terms of concept, in terms of story, in terms of music, in terms of production, in terms of choreography, in terms of a lot of things. But Hamilton, for some reason, a lot of people think that this is the first show that Lin-Manuel had created, and it's what made him famous. But as much as I liked Hamilton opening the doors to a lot of audiences and younger theater fans tuning in, I just feel like Hamilton just fell victim to the hype. It's a good show, don't get me wrong. I just think that this one's a far more superior show to Hamilton. In the Heights is set in an area in New York City called Washington Heights. The theme of the show is all about family, friendships, relationships. It was very relatable to me because they did things in there that normal people do. You go to work. One of the main characters, he owned a bodega or a corner store in that area. And what happens when he goes to work in the morning, opens a store, who comes into the store, and the music that they used was a combination of rap music, rock music, and Latin music. It was just very unique when I first saw it. The show also touched on the real struggles that normal people go through when it comes to being an immigrant, coming to the U.S. From a different place, trying to fit in, trying to make a life for yourself here, and a lot of immigrants, go through the process of starting out from zero, starting out from scratch before they get to a good place in life when they move to this country, which really made it very relatable for me, at least. And people just having plans and dreams in life. There's a song called 96,000. It's about somebody winning the lottery and won $96,000, and they wrote a whole song about that. If you won $96,000, what would you do with it? So you hear these different perspectives from different people depending on where they're at in life and what would they do if they suddenly have $96,000. What would you do if you won $96,000? Next one is one called The Prom, and this one was very, very recent. This was in 2019. And it was one of the shows that I actually saw before Broadway shut down, sadly. The show takes place in the state of Indiana, and it's about a girl who is gay, and she wanted to take her girlfriend to the prom. But, I guess Indiana is a little bit conservative, and they're not very supportive of that. So they decided to cancel the prom instead of having a prom and have a lesbian couple be part of the prom. And there's two different layers to the show, which I really appreciated. In the cast was divided into two categories for me. So one would be a cast that's a little bit more senior, and another one is a cast of high school students. And the way they did it I thought was very clever, because you'll have scenes with the more senior actors that are very reminiscent of the more traditional musicals in the past. And then on the other side of that, the group of high school students who are a bit more, the music is a bit more modern, more upbeat, and then they merged the two together. And I think that's what made this show really incredible, because of the songs, the music, and the way they were able to blend these two different styles together. There's a song in there called Unruly Heart, and if you get a chance to look it up, the title is Unruly Heart from The Prom, and it's a beautiful song that they wrote about gay people going through the daily struggles of trying to figure themselves out, trying to come to terms with who you are, and being able to be comfortable with what you are and who you are. And next one is called Next to Normal. This one I actually saw in Singapore when I was there. And this, to me, is a very, very special show, because it talks about mental health, mental issues, and the things that people go through when you're dealing with someone in your family that is bipolar. And this show only had 6 people in the cast total, or was it 7? But it was very small. So the story of Next to Normal is about a woman who was dealing with depression, and she was diagnosed as bipolar because of something that happened, of a big tragedy that happened in her life 20 years ago. And it was the death of her son when he was a little baby. And since then, she just couldn't cope. She just couldn't deal with all of it. In her mind, she felt like her son was still alive, and she lived her life for the next 20 years thinking that her son was alive, like doing things daily, preparing breakfast for everyone, setting a table setting for her son when he's not there, celebrating his birthday when his birthday came. And she was dealing with all of that, dealing with the pain, medication, a lot of mental struggles happening as well. They had another child. They had a daughter who was living under the shadow of her dead older brother, And so since this woman was so fixated on her son that she had neglected, her daughter, feeling like her mom isn't giving her the attention that she needed because she was too focused on this other person that's not even here anymore. So she grows up being very resentful of her mom, of her parents, and that's another story. And then her husband, he lost a child as well, but he had to deal with that and deal with his wife, who's going through all of this, and deal with his daughter, who feels so neglected. So it was just one of those shows where, in every scene, in every dialogue, you kind of see a little bit of yourself. You kind of see a little bit of your own family. You kind of see a little bit of somebody else's family that when they're going through things like this. Because in a family, it's always normal to have all these drama, all these bickering, all this fighting. However, when something really tragic like this happens in your family, how do you really deal with it? How do you really cope? How do you talk to each other? Do you talk to each other about it? And a lot of that plays out in the show, where no one really wants to talk about their feelings to each other, and that for so many years they just lived their lives like that until it got to a point where everyone's breaking. You always hit a breaking point. And yeah, so this was very intense. I actually found myself crying in some parts of the movie, or some parts of the show, because it was just all too relatable. Like, you see yourself in each of the characters that you're seeing on stage and what they're going through. So this was intense. It was heavy drama. If you don't like heavy drama, don't watch this. But for the subject matter alone, I feel like this is something that people need to see, and it would help out a lot of people that are going through the same things that this family were going through. Next to Normal, I really like the title. I think it's unique. I think it's very different. It's from a line in one of the songs in the show, where it goes, "I don't need a life that's normal, that's just too far away, but something next to normal would be okay. Something next to normal is what I'd like to try. Close enough to normal to get by." Imagine that. Who writes that stuff?